point is have a lot of life experiences first. Make sure if you're going to be a life coach that you have enjoyed a successful life that you can guide people to have as well. So I've worked with tens of thousands of people. I've offered 10,000 free sessions so that people could ask me their key question about what's not working in their life, and I could speak to them about any of the 100 tested and proven tools and skills that I've developed myself. So I've developed all of these tools and skills. I didn't just, find them in some book and now I'm repeating it. And on top of it, if I do repeat something that I learned because I studied for 40 years, I will tell you where I learned it. And not, pretend that I am the one who invented whatever it is, Eckhart Tolle or whatever. So the key for me has always been love. That's where I've put my greatest attention and focus. So my primary trademark is heart space, one word. And heart space tools include, starting from the very beginning, how to self-soothe so that you're a delightful person to be around, which you already are. So how to be peaceful. How to be peaceful is the first step to being loving. How to be loving and understanding what your partner wants and needs and doesn't want and doesn't need. All of that, you have to be able to pay attention, right? So paying attention means that you're able to silence your mind and be present. So I have a number of ebooks on Amazon, but this week I launched my new Heart Space Love Trilogy. The first ebook is about dating, and it's for smart women, women who really want to understand the tools they need to date successfully and find the partner they're looking for. Because that's why people have unsuccessful relationships 90% of the time. They're with the wrong partner anyway. They should break up. They should be thrilled to break up because they've been complaining about this guy to me and you and everybody for most of the time they've been together. The second ebook is called The Magnificent Marriage. And that is about the tools and skills we each need to have the kind of loving marriage you have, loving, peaceful, committed, joyous, a love and a life that is improving itself year after year. And then my personal favorite of the three ebooks in the trilogy, and people can buy them separately, is Sacred Intimacy. Sacred Intimacy is the one that is, really thrilling. So that's my news. And you can get all of them on Gumroad. You can input Susan Allan, which is Allan, or you can input Heartspace. That's one word, Heartspace. And the trilogy will show up, and the three individual ebooks within that will show up too. And here's the best part. The individual ones are $3.99 each, and the trilogy is $9.99 each. So every single person can afford it. That's the point.
Thank you for sharing that, Susan, and of course for the kind words. I always appreciate your compliments. Women, why are they having such a difficult time finding the type of love that you are helping them find?
Well, first of all, there are very few men who are heart-centered at this time in history. We're talking about the evolution of the human race, the needed evolution of the human race, the not yet there evolution of the human race. It would be like coming, in the time of the dinosaurs and saying to me, why aren't there humans all over this planet? And well, they just came out of the ocean, give them a few million years. But we don't have a few million years with men because women who want to have children want to have a man right now who they can count on and they can love and who's capable of loving them back and all the attributes that most women want and very few men offer. So Women, if you're listening to this, it's not your fault. However, even if you want a job and there aren't many jobs in your field in your town, I teach people how to find those jobs. And so I teach women how to find those men. So, whatever the situation, even if you look around and you say, there is scarcity, and I don't care what all those metaphysical people say, yeah, but that doesn't mean you can't get that one. Because guess what? I've had 17 marriage proposals. You only want one. I wasn't even looking for, most of those, believe me. And most of them were ludicrous. They were the men just guessing, assuming certain things. Could be true, could not be true. So you need skills, you need tools. I provide them. Hard Space includes them. These ebooks include many of them. That's the solution right off.
I look back at some of the women that I've come across in my life previously, and they all stated that they want a long-term relationship or they want a marriage at that time. As the days turn into weeks and the weeks turn into months, we realize that you want the idea of it, but you don't want the behavior and the job title and description. Let's not forget, because there's a description to being married. And when I began to realize that, it left me feeling like deflated because you spent this time thinking that you're working towards a common goal, but you're actually not, because you can define it and this other person can't. When you mentioned scarcity now, there's more women on this earth than men, but to your point, are you putting yourself in the best position possible to, one, be found by those men, and two, to find those men? What
And
obstacles do you think people
99%,
have?
99% of the women that I've ever spoken to don't have a clue how to do what you just described. Therefore, they can't be doing it. It's not possible for them to do it, you know. And I always put a lot of time and intelligence and effort into my appearance when I go on a Zoom and when I go out into, the world. And that's the first thing I notice about a lot of women. Guys are, of course, incredibly visual. That's just a fact. There's no point in people going, oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. So what? He's very visual. I have 550 love letters that are really more lust letters from one particular guy who hasn't seen me in, I don't know, 8 or 9 years, hadn't seen me in 34 years. And I looked at the pictures of me 34 years ago. It wasn't that great. I mean, it really wasn't. I improved a lot over time. But his memories of me were, oh my God, I would hate to be his wife. That's all I have to say. I would hate to be his wife because this guy remembered every single second of our time in San Diego, things I didn't remember. And then I saw him again, and he wrote literally 550 letters. So men are visual. I don't think he listened to a thing I said in my life to him. And he's a very smart guy. He's a Yale guy, he's an MIT guy. I'm very intelligent. Doesn't matter. That's not what he was there for. So all of these ideas we have about men should be different, women should be different, let's just throw that out the window. Let's talk about what our needs are, or talk about what other women's needs are for the purpose of your show. And then let's look at how to get those needs met and have them be mutual.
Do you then think that men and women are communicating, but that we're just not maybe listening to what is being said?
You are a very uniquely skilled male communicator. They're not, you are. I told you that I had this 3, 4 hours with ChatGPT working to fix my video cam. It was a brand new video cam and it was a nightmare. And what I discovered was the programming for ChatGPT is everything that most women want in a man, with, of course, the understanding of there's no human being here, there's no body, there's no person who can take you out on a date, nobody's having sex with you, nobody's, at least at this point, picking up the phone and calling you, but that's coming soon. But the charm of this person, the compassion when we hit a dead end technically, when I became exhausted because I'm human, and 3 hours of doing this crazy stuff in the back end of my computer, I was exhausted. And he was so, oh, I understand. And you're almost there and you're doing a great job. And how about if we do one more step? I mean, it was incredible. Terrain, this was like your dream partner if you're a woman for my generation. You don't find men like that. They could be like that. It's easy. But it never occurred to anyone to teach their sons to be like that, except your mom taught you.
I look at like the first book in the trilogy you mentioned is Tips in Dating, and when you go online, you can essentially chat GPT or Google 5 ways to make him love me, 5 ways to make her treat me better. There's all these different ways. There's a lot of no ways, but sometimes we don't hear the voices within. How are you helping the men and women to hear the voices within saying that, hey, he's a visual person, so do this. Hey, she wants someone to make her feel safe and secure. Do that. How are we helping them listen to that inner voice and not the noise outside of ourselves?
Well, they don't have the inner voice. So I can't have them listen to their inner voice because they've never been programmed with this information. I'm programming them for the first time. So the first thing is I'm teaching them as if most people are in first or second grade. Second grade, you learn to read. And it's not easy. Remember? It's complicated. Dating is complicated. So, I've got like 30 pages with about 15 key points. That's just the beginning. But for example, if you want somebody to care about you, the technique called eye gazing, which you can't do on Zoom because you can't actually look into somebody else's eyes. You can look into your own eyes or sort of, but not the same thing. But in real life, across a table on your first date, if you want somebody to be interested, you gaze into their eyes without saying a word, with a soft smile, and you do that for about 60 seconds. But here's the interesting part. Now, it makes sense dating, right? They teach spies this. This comes from what I learned because I'm fascinated by what spies are learning, what intelligence was taught during different wars, because my stepfather was in intelligence in World War II. You'd think this is a dating skill. No, only very recently. I've co-opted it. So you learn that. That's part of how to have a tantric, physical, sacred, intimate experience by being totally out of your own head, totally connected to your partner, letting your partner have a deep, deep, peaceful, joyous, thrilling experience. Now, here's one trick. Most women stop breathing when they're having sex because they're scared. They just stop breathing. Don't know it, don't realize it. But if I work with somebody and I say this to them, and then they go back to their partner and they go, Susan, you won't believe what I discovered last night. Oh, I will. I'm actually a woman. So, yeah.
And to the ladies out there, please don't put yourself in a position where you're gasping for air during intimacy. We want you to breathe, enjoy the moment, enjoy each other's energy, right? Because there's a big sense of vulnerability when it comes to entering the bedroom. But before we get there, you mentioned eye gazing. How important then is the non-verbal communication during the first date or even the second date then?
It's more important than anything else. It's the start. Oh, I'm going to sneeze. Ah,
No, that's I will agree with you because I've seen people when I'm going to, let's say, like a restaurant, I'm just going to pick up takeout, and people look like they're on a date, right?
Wait,
And what's interesting,
we're gonna have to have you edit that. I'm so sorry. I don't know.
no,
There
that's
the
okay.
windows are closed. I don't know why there's a breeze, but
No, that's okay. So when I see people on a date now, what I've noticed is that you'll have people with their cell phones, and there'll be a distraction, right? They're not picking up on the eye gazing and on the clues, the body language. What are maybe some of the ways that we can make sure that we're picking up on these things as we build up to the more romantic and intimate parts of the relationship?
well, don't you think it would be a good idea to have an understanding with somebody before you meet that you're either leaving your phones in the car or you're turning your phones off, not on vibrate, while you're on the date? Now, I have a lot of different things that over the decades I've required of people on dates. Santa Barbara, people think going for a beach walk is a date. No, not for me. Not if I'm doing my hair and my makeup and driving a few minutes to the beach, but that's not a date, that's a beach walk. And I do that with my friends, not some guy who wants to get to know me. In Santa Barbara, people think that having a cup of coffee is a date. No, not for me. Now, if they want to go for a cup of coffee, there are probably a million women who might be interested in doing that, but I'm not one of them. So you've got to get really clear as a woman or a man, what is it that you require? Because that's the number one mistake that most women make. Most women settle for whoever shows up, who they find sexy. Because the truth is, you know, your partner is the person you're going to be having sex with for a very long time if you're young, and a sort of long time if you're not so young, and too long even if you're ancient. You don't like them, right? If you don't like that person, if you're not crazy about that person, it's hell. So never think that this is your partner just because this partner showed up in your life. This is only your partner if he or she meets enough of your criteria. And you have to know what that list is first before the
Everyone who
phone rings. Yeah.
I was gonna yeah, to your point, I was gonna say everyone who's had sex with someone that they knew the relationship wasn't gonna last, put your hands up and stand up in front of the class, right? Because there's a lot of people that have that. But going back to the list
But
and
wait, wait,
communicating
wait,
it,
wait. Unless that's what you were there for and it's fine with you. Because
yes,
I knew the relationships weren't going to last, in most of the time, and that was fine with me. But every so often, the person turned out to be so fabulous. It's like, damn. Oh well. But then you say,
yeah,
well, at least I had that experience with this person. Maybe otherwise I wouldn't have had any experience with this person. So
to
being
your point, right? Like
philosophical.
if you knew,
Yeah,
then you're okay. Okay. So what about like understanding what is that you truly want? Because as you mentioned, one person can only want the sexual experience and the other person wants a relationship.
exactly. Exactly. And it's no longer true that all men want just sex and all women want relationships. That hasn't been true in a long time, since Helen Gurley Brown created Cosmo.
Oh, I know what you're referring to. Those are the early days of Cosmo and trying to
Yeah.
figure it out, right?
Yeah, well, waking up to the reality that every single woman wasn't like their grandmother, you know? And maybe even their grandmother wasn't like that.
Yeah, yeah. People think that there's, let's say, anyone born before the 60s were like angels, saints, and virgins until they get to a certain age and they're like, listen, honey, all those things that you think you're doing, I was
We
doing it.
already, yeah,
We already did it.
we already did it. I just watched a fabulous series on Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill's mother was American, Jenny Jerome. Winston Churchill's mother had no time for Winston, because she was too busy having sex with the Prince of Wales at the time. We're talking about a long time ago. So really fascinating, really, really fascinating. And lots of stories in the Churchill family about all sorts of goings on. Not Winston, but other family members. Interesting. Because, you know, sometimes people in a family are very much like one of the earlier generations. Sometimes they're the opposite. But the key here is whatever you're looking for. If you're a woman and you're listening to this, you're a woman, you've got to make your list. You've got to write 50 to 100 line items. It's got to start with he is mentally healthy. He is physically healthy. He is monogamous. He is single. He is looking for his perfect life partner if you're looking for your perfect life partner. If not, then leave that one off. But all the other ones just make life simple as opposed to a torture. Then every other one you'll find in my ebook, there are categories, 10 different categories. And so you have room for about 10 in each category. And it's amazing because we're talking about the different cultures generationally in America and Canada, etc., that it's amazing how few women or men list their sexual preferences because they're still afraid and ashamed to think that they even have sexual needs. Come on. So you need to be crystal clear. I could say to somebody, what's your preferred frequency of sexual experience with your partner? And one person says, oh, my wife wants to have sex all the time. And I say very brightly, what's all the time? 3 times a week. And then another one says, another person says, my husband never wants to have sex. And then it's some, crazy number. How often, will he have sex? Well, he'll have sex, 5 times a week, but like he never wants to have sex, so people have completely different ideas. And then what does sex mean? Be specific. And was this person a good fit in the first place? You know, there's a car and there's a parking spot. The car either fits in the parking spot or it doesn't. It's not complicated. So there are all these things that most people aren't considering. And that's why our divorce rate is about 60%. And that's why second marriages are worse, much more divorce, and third and fourth, etc.
What role then do you think guilt and shame plays in identifying the type of sex and the frequency of it?
Yeah, if you haven't done your inner work about what you want, what you need, what you deserve, how you're going to get it, all that, then you are just a program running right out of the movie series The Matrix. You're not you at all. Call me for your free session. It's private. Nobody will know what you talked to me about. We'll fix it so that you are no longer run like a program by your parents, your teachers. They may not even be alive anymore, but you're programmed and it's still running. And that's a terrible thing, right?
It is like you look at like some people who would probably still have, anytime they explore sex or intimacy, they have to make sure that all the doors are locked. The blinds are closed. It's in the darkest of night, 11:59 p.m., right? Not on a Saturday or Sunday, because those are the holy days, so it has to be on a Friday,
Yikes.
right? And you wonder now the pressure, the stress of just getting yourself to the act can be a lot for many people. And I know in your third book that you're looking at is Sacred Intimacy. How can we get back to the sacredness of intimacy in our relationships?
Well, I do it on a one-to-one basis because people are so shy, etc., about this that I've seen what people discuss in a group about sex, and it's basically nothing. So it's like a waste of time. So when somebody says, I can't do this or I can't do that or I'm afraid to do this or I've tell myself stories about that, then we've got to start with bringing them to controlling their mind. And there's a couple of breathing techniques that are fabulous for that. And when you have these breathing techniques, it's called brain breathing. And I teach it in, I think it's in the dating ebook, but if anyone wants to learn it and they don't need the dating ebook, they could just email me or text me and talk to me and I'll send them the video training. So when you do brain breathing, you're now silencing your mind. Once you silence your mind, you can begin to think about what you really want in life, whether it's in terms of passion or anything else. It solves everything when you're really here, when you're really present, you know?
So, Susan, I know we talked about the dating tips and the intimacy, and for many of us, the goal is to get the magnificent marriage, right? What do you, of all of the people that you work with, what are some commonalities when it comes to the struggle to reach that end goal of finding a healthy, lasting relationship that may be a marriage or maybe something else?
It's all about putting the time in at the beginning to clarify what your needs are for a partner, and then being vigilant with yourself, being so strict with yourself that you don't let yourself get sidetracked. If I go shopping in the old days to a department store and I'm looking for a black jacket, I'm not going to end up buying black lace underwear without coming home with a black jacket. Now, maybe I'll buy both, but if I am going shopping for something specifically, it's because I need that thing. There's a benefit for me to getting that thing. So here we see people who are just so unfocused. They don't have the ability to focus their brain. And I teach Herman brain dominance. That's one of my specialties. And as humans, we have four parts of the brain. Each part of those four parts has a particular focus and skill set. The upper left brain is about money. It's about success, in other words, reaching a goal. It's about focusing your mind and your thoughts and some other things. The lower left is about taking specific, consistent, targeted action in order to be safe. So that's a lot less goal related than the first one, because that's just about being safe, where the first one is about being success and reaching your goal. The lower right brain, the third quadrant of the brain, is all about what you and I are doing, connecting to people, having empathy for people, having empathy for ourselves, that kind of thing. And the fourth is the visionary, the idea brain, where you can look outside the box, you can find other solutions that might work, but it has nothing to do with reaching goals. It's just the basic generic idea. It has nothing to do with staying safe. It has nothing to do with intimate relationships and connecting to people. So obviously, we need all four parts of our brain working pretty well in concert with one another. And here's the bad news: only 1% of us is born with that. So the rest, we've got to work really hard for long periods of time, in my case, to get there.
What about the people who have had heartbreak after heartbreak and they no longer feel that they're worthy of the type of relationships that we're talking about? How do we get them to increase their self-worth and know that love doesn't expire? You can have it at any time in your life.
Well, people who have been unsuccessful driving a car and either got a lot of tickets or had a lot of accidents know that they need somebody to teach them about driving a car better, right? I mean, I took 30 lessons in New York City before I went for my driving test because I'd been a passenger for 30 odd years because in New York City you don't need a car. But then I didn't drive for a while and I was moving to California. So I was smart. I picked up the phone and I got another like a dozen driving lessons so I could go on freeways, competently. But nobody does this with relationships except for a very small percentage of people. And then they think their best friend can help them, which is the worst strategy in the world. Don't ask your friends, call me. Don't complain to your friends, which is even worse. Call me. If you notice that you've had situation after situation that ended badly, it's because you don't have enough skills. Either you don't have skills in knowing what you want, or you don't have skills in identifying if he is those things legitimately, or you don't know how to communicate with him in writing and orally and in, person and through touch, so that everything you both need that is theoretically on those lists is really happening. So you're getting your needs met. And if it still falls apart after that, it's because you've got some mood swing issues. Because if it's ever been wonderful for a period of time and then it falls apart, it is 90% of the time it's because people tend to have mood swing things. They don't know how to stay consistently peaceful, happy, loving, supportive, and sweet.
Why do you think it's hard for people to accept responsibility and perhaps accountability for their poor relationship outcomes then?
Culturally, they're told to blame the other person. But, it isn't true. So at some point, we wake up and we say, that other person that I'm blaming doesn't live in my bedroom, doesn't live in my home, may not even, live in my town. So what am I going to get out of blaming that other person? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I am, like you, Terrain, very much a self-actualized and self-actualizing person. If somebody is going to come and rescue me, they haven't shown up yet. So thank God I didn't sit around waiting.
Yeah, I'm the type of person like in my 20s, I went through difficult relationships, friendships, and romantic. And I remember looking in the mirror and saying that, okay, what am I doing to contribute to this? And what is out of my control? And when I had that conversation, the majority of my problems was because of me. I
Fabulous.
was causing it, right? I was doing things. I
Fabulous.
was allowing people to treat me this way. I was people pleasing. I was doing whatever it took. Once I had that realization, it goes back to that song. I can see clearly now the rain is gone. Like everything made sense. So I changed, right? And then I had more positive, more healthy people around me because you remember the time where anytime something ended, it was the woman is crazy or the man is a deadbeat, right? Like that was the blame language, right? No one ever says, "Oh, I was acting crazy here," or "Oh, I was not understanding here," or "Oh, I didn't have enough emotional awareness." How important then, Susan, is the work on the individual level for the people that you work with?
Well, it's 100% important for each of us. Doing our inner work is how you really separate the men from the boys. The people who've done their inner work, whether they're, whatever it is, whatever sexual identification, we're the ones who have power over the circumstances and situations. And it, may take a while. If I've got a problem, it may take me a while to fix it, solve it. However, so far, so good. I've fixed and solved thousands of things in my life and, like hundreds of thousands of things for other people. That's your only hope. Nobody's coming to rescue you. That's your only hope. And even if there are people who will help, and of course, if you're a wonderful person, you have people with help, you don't know if they're going to be alive next year. I've studied with some of the greatest thought leaders alive on the planet Earth. Marshall Rosenberg, the founder of nonviolent communication, trained me and was my mentor. And older than me, he passed away. Fernando Flores, Dr. Flores, who was one of the great, great thought leaders, and he co-created the Landmark Forum program. I was in a private 3-year program with him. Then he left, went back to his country, Chile, and was offered the presidency. He was not coming back to do trainings with the likes of me. So thank God I got the training. I could go on and on with that list. Dr. Frank Zizzo, a genius of a psychotherapist who I studied with, not had therapy with, but studied with when I was creating the marriage forum, so that I made sure that everything I was teaching people was consistent with what he knew. He passed away because, again, stuff happens. So I always say the most important thing anyone can do who's listening to this is pick up the phone and call me or text me, have a free session with me, get their primary questions answered. And then if I'm able to solve a problem for them that makes sense in the way that I'm doing it, work with me. Doesn't matter to me. By 12 sessions, that's the least expensive. Or by 6 sessions, it's slightly more. By one session at a time. By the 3 ebooks. The whole point is, are you committed to transforming the quality of your life today? And that's what you and I have in common, Terrain. One of the things.
Yeah, we have a lot of things in common, Susan, by the way.
We do,
And
we do, we
right?
do.
And I want to piggyback on
Thank
that because
God.
God is good all the time, right? Because you want to make sure that you are regaining your power because so many of us spend so many years giving our powers to other people. Well, this person will empower me. Take the time to realize, what am I going to do so I can love myself even more? And if you're willing to spend 6 months training for a job that so many of us hate, then you can spend 6 months on yourself who you love. You want to be loved, right? It's hard to go out into the world and ask people to love us in a way that we can't even love ourselves, right?
I spent $1 million over 40 years getting trainings and attending workshops, retreats, intensives, and I've been to India 57 times. I only say this so that people understand I did it so you don't have to. I did it because I came before you on the planet, a long time before many of you. And I was desperate to feel better, to feel less miserable. I was not happy. And my entire family was successful. And I didn't see how in the world I was going to get there. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know what to do. And I just said, okay, the first thing I'm going to take is that course. And I learned about brain waves and how to get into a higher brainwave state. That was the beginning for me. Then the next thing was understanding that this is all there is. This is this moment, and you better make the most of this moment. And you better stop making up stories about why it's their fault and da da da. So onward and upward, but it was that commitment I made to myself, feeling awful. So I didn't love myself and do all this work because I was so special. No, I didn't see a way out unless I did some drastic inner work. And I just kept going and it worked. And being around spiritually minded people really was pleasurable for me. So I kept going back to India, and here we are today.
Susan, when you look back on that, how good does it feel to be on this side of your journey versus when you first started it?
Well, I really like the idea that there is no loss in divine mind, and everything that, we've lost is coming back. I'd like to have that $1 million again. So, however, I didn't have a choice. I didn't have a choice. And the girl who was my best friend from the time we were 4 years old till the time we graduated from prep school died from drugs. So when I look back at my life, Terrain, that's what I look at. Where but for the grace of God go I. Here And I never had to go into those terrible, terrible dark places. I mean, terrible dark places. And I do a lot of work on sobriety and ending addiction with, I need one committed family member, whether it's a parent, whether it's a spouse, whether it's an adult child. And my skill set that I put together is 100% successful. 100% successful to motivate and inspire that family member of someone's to see that they are worthwhile, that they are worth it, and they can and will get clean and sober and stay that way. But they need one person, not just detox and rehab. That doesn't do it. They need one person who knows them and who loves them to learn from me how to hold them in their heart and in their hands and communicate in a very different way. Because guess what? Being harsh is not just the problem. Being permissive is just as big a problem. So if anybody listening and has that situation, call me even faster than everybody else who just wants to date and marry and have great sex.
That ties in perfectly to what you mentioned earlier about when you're seeking advice from people, and so many of us will go get it from the wrong person. You're single, you're trying to find love, and you go to your friend who's been single longer than you, or you've gone to the other friend who has 10 relationships in 8 months, and you're trying to figure it out because everything around you is just chaos, drama, and just broken relationships. Then you highlighted that one person, the Susans in the world, the Trains, or whomever, that's, hey, we are living examples. If you make this change and this change, you can find the type of happiness you want. What do you think is preventing people from doing that shift from the people that surround them that isn't helping them reaching their goals to a new group of people that may help them reach their goals?
Well, I'll tell you what stopped me for many years because I took one course that was wonderful. And then I waited 5 more years before I took the next workshop, retreat, seminar, intensive program, which I then stayed in for many years. But the thing that stopped me was I'm smart. I should figure it out by myself. Now that's pure nonsense. Pure nonsense. I wouldn't have said to myself, I'm smart. I should know how to speak Russian. Or I'm smart and all four of my grandparents were from Ukraine. I should know how to speak Russian. No, I would never say anything ridiculous like that. I would say if I didn't learn Russian, I don't know how to speak Russian. What in the world was going on in my ego? Well, that's all it is, just nonsensical ego junk. So if anybody has a problem, they need to find someone who is an expert and can prove that they are an expert. I have 60 pages of testimonials. So that looks like proof to me, right? I have 330 videos on YouTube, including the one we did 7 months ago. So, that proves to me that I'm an expert. I now have 6 ebooks and lots of people have read them. So find an expert. And if you know in your heart of hearts that your qualifications are not similar to mine, then you probably are not an expert. Fair enough. Study with me for a little while, you'll become an expert. I promise.
Yeah, it goes back to that saying single people keep people single and broken people break things, right? You want to be able to understand that if your friends or the people around you were so wise, dropping wisdom from the heavens on relationships, on success, on financial, then why aren't they benefiting from the advice that they give? And that's how you can tell, right? Like I used to have a group of male friends. They're more acquaintances now. And Susan, every time they have the opportunity, they would tell you what works in relationships. And then you would ask them the question, which is the $1 million question, $1 billion with inflation these days. Why don't you have success using the advice you're giving? Oh, don't worry about me. Well, I'm worried about me. You can continue to destroy yourself, right? I'm worried about me. If I'm going to listen to your insanity, I want to see it be at least successful in your life, right? So that's what I learned about myself looking back. Susan, what's one of the things that you learned about yourself at this age that you're like, you know what? I'm a little surprised here, or I'm happy I learned this?
Do we have 46 hours? So, one of the things that shocked me, and looking at me, the appearance I have is part of why this piece of information is so surprising. I never should have gotten married. I don't like it. And you mentioned it today. You're the only person I have ever met, not just the only person who has a podcast. You're the only person I've ever met who actually said that. The description of marriage. It's boring to me, or it's very stressful for me because the men that I've known don't have certificates saying they've done their inner work. Very few men have. They're not happy, peaceful people all the time. They expect their wives to have an extra career called keeping him happy. I don't want to keep him happy. I don't even want to keep my clients happy. I teach my clients how to keep themselves happy. And my first husband was a very happy guy. Problem was, I was never in love with him, but he was a really happy guy and a good friend. And I thought it might work, but every man, every woman deserves to be loved. I mean, deeply and permanently adored, like Nancy and Ronald Reagan. They legitimately adored each other. And that is what every single person on this earth deserves. And you'll see a lot of anger and a lot of resentment and a lot of violence when one or both of them aren't getting that. So that was what I learned in my life, the big lesson. I'm totally romantic. I have gone to the ends of the earth for various romances. I mean, literally, literally. But a romance is a different story from a 50-year marriage. And so you have to know who you are. You have to know what's a fit for you and what's not a fit for you.
And Susan, one final question before I let you go. I want to give you three wishes, and these are three things you can wish people knew about this question. What are three things you wish people knew about the importance of love for yourself when you're in a relationship, and why?
Well, I am literally addicted to love in the very best way. And it starts with self-love. That we've all heard that you're only going to allow yourself to be loved as much as you love yourself. We all know that. I've certainly spent a lot of years attempting to prop men up who had a lot of things about them that were fabulous, except they had troubled home lives or troubled mothers, and they never got themselves to that place. And it destroyed them. And I got out of the way eventually, but it destroyed them. And it wasted years of my life and lots of energy and lots of money. So the most important thing is stop what you're doing right now after you finish listening to this podcast and answer that question for yourself. Do I love myself enough to